Please give a warm welcome to Margot Parker, MEP.
Good afternoon, conference. Napoleon Bonaparte once described this country as a nation of shopkeepers. Well, that was then. Today, we could be better described as a nation of builders. At the start of last year, there were an estimated 5.2 million small businesses in the UK, together employing over 12 million people and with a combined turnover of £1.2 trillion, according to the Department of Business, Innovation and Skills. And only just over 10% of businesses are shopkeepers or otherwise involved in either retail or the wholesale trade. By far the greater portion of businesses now, 18%, operate in the construction industry. We also have a significant proportion of businesses in the professional, scientific, technical industry, in manufacturing, IT, and administration. And virtually all of us who are working in agriculture, forestry, or fishing are working for a small business. These small businesses are the lifeblood of Britain. They are a major contributor to turnover, employing 48% of the workforce and reported to create 85% of all new jobs. We fail to recognise just how crucial they are at our peril. They are the backbone of our economy and the principal driver of our labour market. It is within our smaller businesses that we find our greatest innovators, our entrepreneurs, those plucky souls who make a decision to take control of their own future, the ones who have a vision to create, sell, or build something for the benefit of themselves and those around them. It's people such as these and the businesses that they start and grow that will take us out of the economic turmoil we've suffered in recent years and back into the black. Yet too often, these go-getting entrepreneurs are not supported. They struggle to get finance to set up, expand their businesses. Bigger companies don't pay their invoices on time, treating the little man as a moneylender, ruining their cash flow and potentially putting them out of business. And if I had £1 for every businessman or woman I've heard complain about oppressive burden of regulation, then I'd be quite a rich woman indeed. All these issues and more are stifling our small businesses. They're depriving the business owners of one thing that probably attracted them to setting up their own business in the first place: the freedom of being their own boss. Well, if you're one of these people, and if you're working all the hours you can to build a business you've started, if you are a wealth creator and a generator of jobs, then UKIP is the party for you. Why? Because UKIP is the only party that will liberate you from the shackles that bind you, the only party that can give you your freedom back. So let's talk about regulation. Massive over-regulation by the European Union, which impacts disproportionately on smaller businesses. It's as if the EU is deliberately going out of its way to make life more difficult for smaller businesses. I'll give you just one example, although there are many. Let's discuss VATMOS. Why else would out-of-touch commissioners introduce ill-thought-out initiatives such as VATMOS, for instance, which was introduced in 2008 but came into law on the 1st of January this year? VATMOS is an appalling piece of legislation that has already led directly to the death of 200 micro-businesses. And I suspect many of those will be women who work from home, perhaps fitting their business around the family and their children. VATMOS forces UK firms selling digital services such as online auctions, e-books, online magazines, music, films, games, website supply and hosting services, software supplies, and so on, to register for VAT, even if your turnover is below 81k a year, the current registration threshold. You will also have to charge VAT on the applicable rate in the country you're selling to. It pushes up your costs and your selling prices. It's more interference, more cost, more regulation, more dictatorship. Precisely what small businesses don't want and don't need. Worst of all is the extra administrative burden you'll face. Registering for VATMOS means having to invoice for VAT or not, depending on the different rules in the different jurisdictions, collect 2 pieces of non-conflicting information to prove the location of the consumer, store that information on an EU server for up to 10 years, implement data protection rules, registering with the Data Protection Commissioner in each jurisdiction. And oh boy, you wouldn't believe how lengthy and time-consuming that can be. You have to create a separate legal entity, register for VATMOS, if you want to lose your UK VAT threshold exemption. You have to comply VAT returns quarterly, or risk facing penalties in potentially all 28 EU member state jurisdictions. Be ready for audits from potentially all 28 jurisdictions. Can you see why 200 businesses have gone to the wall in the last 8 weeks? Perhaps it's a miracle, it's not more. I spoke recently to a small businessman in the chemicals industry who has to employ 2 people in the non-productive role just to make sure his company complies with employment regulations, form filling and EU bureaucracy. Not that his problem ends there, of course. Over the past 15 to 20 years, he's seen niche products that it's taken him years to develop into profitable lines regulated out of existence. Excess regulation either made them too expensive to produce, or his company couldn't afford the huge costs of registering a previously nationally approved product at EU level, because the markets for his products were too small to justify the investment. He's not alone. Firms working in the health food, vitamin business, herbal remedies, pesticides, animal health products, pharmaceuticals have all gone bust. Thousands of jobs as a direct result of EU interference. And of course, all this red tape favours big business who can afford the admin staff to cope with all this massive administration and cost burden. And for big business, it becomes an advantage. Often they lobby regulators, and why not? If smaller businesses are forced to shut up shop, it reduces the competition, doesn't it? No wonder big businesses and organisations that represent them, like the CBI, shout foul whenever leaving the EU is ever mentioned. Their cries that we will lose jobs and be poorer outside of the EU should be treated for what they really are, the sound of self-interested bellyaching. Outside of the EU, we could, and UKIP would, ditch the dead hand of excessive regulation and EU bureaucracy. Millions of small and medium-sized businesses would then be able to employ more people, take away the barriers the EU puts up to business, and I believe there'd be an explosion of growth in small and medium-sized enterprises. Fewer than 1 in 10 British businesses trade with the EU, yet 100% of them must comply with thousands of EU laws on employment, waste management, environmental regulations, product legislation, etc., etc. The burden is destroying small businesses and helping to destroy our economy. British businesses are better off out. Let's move on to the problem of cash flow. Vince Cable, head of Department of Business, Innovation and Skills, or business's spin, as I like to call it, admits the scourge of late and long payments is a massive problem for smaller businesses. Yet what has the coalition government, of which he is part, done about it? Absolutely nothing. Businesses are going bust because they're not being paid. Never be a banker for your customers is one piece of good business advice I was given, but sometimes that's easier said than done. There's more than £20 billion locked up in delayed late payments from bigger businesses to smaller suppliers of goods and services. It's corporate bullying and it needs to stop. Now, I have to tell you, the real irony here is that there's actually an EU regulation to deal with this problem, the Late Payments Directive, 2011. Yet, despite being a self-confessed Europhile, Vince Cable isn't enforcing this regulation. It has no teeth. The small businesses can't afford to pursue the bigger corporations, so despite the rules, the big boys get away with it anyway. This, I suggest, is one rule UKIP might keep on our bonfire of EU directives and regulations upon Brexit. And my goodness, we wouldn't shy away from enforcing it. The Conservatives might be disinterested, focused as they are on big business backers and wealthy donors, seldom sparing a thought for the sort of hard-working strivers they claim to support. And as for Labour, well, they obviously don't have a clue. Remind me, Ed, what is the name of the head of your small business task force? Bill something, was it? Anyway, UKIP will act. Let's talk about finance. We want to make it so much easier for startups and smaller businesses to secure financing, offering easy access to business angels, business credit unions, and promoting new financial options such as peer-to-peer lending and crowdfunding are part of that answer. But we'll also press for a reform of the retail banking sector, and we will require banks, and especially those that were bailed out by public money, to simplify the lending process for smaller businesses and invest more in startups and smaller business expansion. They borrowed the people's cash. Now it's time to lend it back to the people. And what about taxation? Well, UKIP has always pushed for lower taxation, and here, as always, we'll put our money where our mouth is. We'll bring forward proposals in our manifesto to cut the burden of taxation on our businesses, especially our smaller and medium-sized businesses. If you can't make money, you don't have a business. You have a hobby. And UKIP is in the business of helping people make money and run sustainable, profitable businesses. This is why it's UKIP's policy to encourage local authorities to make life easier for businesses too, by providing cheaper and ideally free parking in our high streets to encourage customers back into town. I'd like to see every local authority in the country give at least 30 minutes free parking in our town centres, our high streets and our shopping parades. Often our local UKIP councillors push for this, but of course they face enormous resistance from their local authorities who see parking income as a good source of revenue. Finding the right people is always a challenge for businesses too, which is why UKIP is proposing young people can start an apprenticeship in place of 4 non-core subjects at GCSE level, and why we're abolishing tuition fees for those studying science, technology, engineering, maths and medicine. UKIP believe learning a trade and following a vocation are equally as important as higher education. What matters is introducing policies that will get our schools, colleges and our universities producing an able, skilled workforce that our businesses need. We also allow employers to prioritise British passport holders for their workplace, especially young workers who are finding it hardest to get on the jobs ladder. There are 1 million fewer low-skilled British workers in jobs now than since the start of the last Labour government in 1997, and 1 more million Eastern European migrants in work here in Britain than a decade ago. Is that just coincidence? I think not. Throwing open the doors to migrant workers prepared to work for lower wages, allowing British jobs to be advertised across Europe, has been disastrous for our young people. They want to work. They deserve an opportunity to work. And UKIP will bring back them in this search for work. We'll help them. Finally, I want to say that many businesses in Britain are started by immigrants. And I, for one, I'm very proud of that. And I'm sick to death of being told we're anti-immigration. We're not. I value anyone, wherever they're from, who's prepared to roll up their sleeves, who has the drive to succeed and add to the economic well-being of this country. These are precisely the sort of immigrants we want, and we can all learn by their hard-working and dedicated example. In Australia, entrepreneurs are favoured by the immigration system, and I'd want to do exactly the same here. Pleasure speaking to you today, and I should say too that I've been speaking to you as a businesswoman myself, not a career politician. I faced all these struggles in my own time at the coalface, and now I'm in the European Parliament. I can see the writing on the wall. That place will never loosen its grip on power. It will never cut the red tape. It is interested only in endlessly increasing regulation and centralising control. The only party which is committed to taking back our independence, to making our own laws and reforging our country into one in which both democracy and business can thrive is the one that believes in Britain. UKIP. UKIP will never, unlike our European premiers, both past and present, dismiss Britain as a nation of shopkeepers or builders or anything else. UKIP believes in Britain's small businesses, in its entrepreneurs, in its team of sole traders, freelancers and self-starters. To those of you who branched out on your own, who sought your freedom and dreamed of building your own business, I say to you, we want to lower the costs you face, slash your administrative and regulatory burdens. We want to do everything that we can to help you be competitive in a global market. We believe in you. You can believe in us. Thank you.